What's going on, guys? Before you click off this video, dislike it, and tell me to kill myself, just let me say that this isn't a video comparing which game is better, but instead comparing the differences in mechanics and theme, especially for those who may be Pokemon fans and want to check out Monster Hunter Stories. I think that knowing the differences between the two games is important because it'll affect how you end up playing it. So whether you were hoping for a video talking about how much better Monster Hunter Stories is than Pokemon, or how much worse Monster Hunter Stories is than Pokemon, I'm sorry to disappoint. I may do a video in the future talking about what Pokemon could take from Monster Hunter Stories to improve itself, and what Monster Hunter Stories could potentially take from Pokemon to improve its formula as well, but that's neither here nor there. That said, if you are a fan of monster taming games such as Pokemon, Monster Hunter Stories, Nexomon, etc., definitely consider subscribing to the channel where we cover all of these types of games chiefly. And with that being said, let's jump right into today's video. Okay, so the first and maybe biggest difference between how the two franchises work is how they're played and the theme behind that. And what I mean by this is that both games feature friendship as a main mechanic by which the main character has to adhere to in order to bring out the full potential of their monsters. However, the biggest difference is how this is portrayed in each game. In Pokemon, in order to recruit monsters, you simply capture the Pokemon, and in doing this, I suppose they respect you enough to follow your every command. The games themselves oftentimes reference a protagonist being somewhat pure of heart and always treating their Pokemon with the utmost of respect, but we don't really see that being portrayed through the mainline activity. The power dynamic in terms of both intelligence and command does seem to be much more favored with the human as well, and before someone tries to tell me, oh well, Alakazam has an IQ of 5,000, you tell me what that moron does when you throw it into the battle mansion, and then we'll talk. Anyways, what I'm getting at is that the relationship between Pokemon and human is one of love and respect, but more so in the terms of what you'd see with maybe a person and their pet, if people force their pets to fight each other. This is by no means like a knock or a stab at Pokemon. This is just the way they do it. It's just a reflection of truth. This isn't a negative thing particularly. In Monster Hunter Stories, the relationship between human and monster does have some parallels to Pokemon. The humans clearly seem to be more intelligent and can also command their monsters to perform specific attacks, but I think the biggest difference here is that the player and the monster actually fight together. This creates a far more equal dynamic between the stakes and the monsters and humans, creating what I think is a very interesting dynamic. In the world of Monster Hunter, the humans actually don't even really need monsters. A lot of them slay them themselves. The riders are a sort of outcast amongst the broader society. This isn't like Pokemon where the humans are tasked with strategic capabilities, but are essentially useless in combat. I think that the bond created through the bloodshed of battle is something that we as the player can see being very mutual and equal. This is even further cemented by the way in which monsters are obtained in each game. In Pokemon, you have to sort of defeat them in combat and prove yourself and then capture it, whereas in Monster Hunter Stories, the entire capture mechanic, quote unquote, is actually based off of ripping children away from their parents. Oh wait, both systems are fucked. But seriously, the monsters in Monster Hunter Stories don't suddenly change their mind because, oh, you're cool and you caught me, but instead, it's because they basically look at you like the parent as you raised them from an egg. Except Ranmar, he's just a simp. This very fact actually plays into gameplay as well. Combat is very different in each game, and I'm not just talking about the differences between, let's say, Pokemon types and Monster Hunter Story elements or their version of types either. In Pokemon, as long as your team doesn't get knocked out, you can keep battling, whereas in Monster Hunter Stories, one of your team members could get knocked out for a total of 3 times. Doesn't matter if it's the same monster or if it's you or if it's a combination of those. 3 strikes, you're out. Your player character is also a lot more versatile than the average monster, allowing you to use different types of hacks, use different weapons, use different types of armor, etc. From the ground up, these battle systems are very different, whereas one focuses on choosing specific attacks and executing them, whilst the other focuses more on prediction and game knowledge. This, of course, is completely different when we're talking about competitive, where I'd say, at least in my experience with the Pokemon meta, game knowledge is very important. But just for your average Joe, as long as you have a basic understanding of how types work, that's kind of how you have to play with Pokemon. Whereas in Monster Hunter Stories, you do have to kind of understand what attack patterns your enemies will use in order to win head-to-heads in order to gain kinship, which will allow you to use your stronger techniques. I wouldn't say one system's better than the other. I would actually say that I enjoy both systems as they keep me gripped for different reasons. If you would like to see me doing a video breaking down each system and what I like about each, let me know. The entire narrative of both games is also very different, whereas in Pokemon you live in a more modern society where Pokemon battles are basically a sport and it's your goal to become the very best and compete through widespread competition. Monster Hunter Stories is more focused on a plot-driven narrative, whereas in Pokemon you travel the region like a tourist, exploring new areas for the hell of it, on sort of like a scavenger quest. Monster Hunter Stories actually propels you to these different areas because something that has arisen in the story pulls you there. One thing I actually really like about the Pokemon franchise is the fact that Pokemon battling is so ingrained in its society. It really gives you a sense of competitiveness when literally everyone around you is trying to achieve the same goal and you have to sort of stand above all of them. Whereas in most RPGs, you're generally some chosen one or some special person who's tasked with saving the world. That said, Pokemon has tried that sort of thing and I'm not really a big fan of it, but I really like the whole idea of just going on a journey which isn't propelled by some dire situation, but instead the desire to find oneself and experience the world for their first time on their own. This is further ingrained into the way people play these games as well. In Pokemon, you typically find your favorite Pokemon, and those Pokemon will stick with you throughout the entirety of your journey with a few exceptions. This is why starters and starter evolutions are so popular amongst fans of various monster taming games, because you build a connection with these creatures that you travel through your whole journey with. I can still remember my teams from every single generation of Pokemon, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. Whereas in Monster Hunter Stories, you're consistently swapping out your monsters, using the right of channeling to make new monsters that are better and essentially throwing out the old ones. And even the system works that way with leveling. Low-level monsters level up very quickly in order to promote that type of behavior. Now, we could talk about Pokemon breeding, how that's essentially similar, where you're just throwing out all these non-perfect eggs, but I'm talking about main mechanics. Breeding is something you do in competitive, not something that's really pushed on you all that much. These two are really in a stark contrast with each other. With Pokemon, it's all about traveling with the Pokemon you love. You can have a monotyped team, a team of pseudo-legendaries, or just other gimmicky teams, whereas in a lot of other RPGs, and especially in Monster Hunter Stories, you need to actually think about your team building in order to progress. If you were to try to run a full team of power monsters, you probably have a hard time winning any clashes. But yeah, that's my little spiel about how Monster Hunter Stories and Pokemon are different from one another. Like I said, I could make a video talking about the various aspects I like about Monster Hunter Stories better than Pokemon and vice versa. If you guys came here for me to compare Monster Hunter Stories to Pokemon Sword and Shield in terms of graphical fidelity, content, etc., Monster Hunter Stories is going to win that, at least in my opinion, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to explore Pokemon as a whole outside of just Generation 8 and explore Monster Hunter Stories as a whole. And I mean, hey, maybe we'll get a Monster Hunter Stories 3 one day. That'd be pretty epic. But anyways, if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Definitely let me know what you guys thought about this video. It would mean a lot to get some of you guys' feedback. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.